You are listening to Mediation Station, and this is your host, Greg Fenton. Our topic for discussion tonight is called Mediation Roleplay on Radio, with our visitors, Alexandra Hill, Joni Cass, and Devika Ratnayake. Again, to note, it's legal information, it's not legal advice, which is quite distinct from that. So, as I mentioned earlier, tonight's topic is called Mediation Roleplay on Radio. And we're going to conduct, for the first time, something that's close to my profession and a lot of other people's profession and the source of a lot of the work that we do. And we're going to actually perform a mediation on the radio. This is a role-play scenario that has been created for this radio show and serves two purposes. One is to help in educating the public to be aware of and learn about a process used for people to come together in some form to have conversations together regarding matters affecting them in some way, and to decide together on what to do about those matters. Mediation can and does take many forms in terms of process, practice, and purpose. Today, we are presenting one of those forms that has been modified, which is important to note, too, as being a fundamental nature of the process for the purposes of doing it in a more focused manner for tonight, to be accommodated within the time of the radio program. There will be times when I will step into the process and discuss amongst the role players what's happening. So I want to connect you now with Alexandra as the mediator, Joni as the employee, and Devika as the manager. And just to note too, it's going to be recorded as we usually do as an audio and create as a podcast, and also video recorded and edited, and then later on uploaded to YouTube, for example. So go ahead and do your thing, Alexandra.
Thank you, Greg. I'd like to welcome you both here today. Joni and Devika, I know that it can be difficult coming to a meeting such as this one, and by showing up here today and showing your willingness to participate in this discussion, it's a very positive step, and I feel confident that with some understanding and some trust in the process, and with my help, we're going to be able to reach an agreement that you're both happy with, and it's going to make things in the workplace a lot easier for you. So I know that we've met individually, both of us, and so I know a little bit about what's going on for the both of you and what we need to discuss today to move things forward and to resolve the conflict. I just want to talk a little bit about what's going to happen today and what you can both expect. So just a reminder that I'm not the judge. My role today is not to assign blame or to come up with a resolution to the problem for either of you. I am simply here to help facilitate a conversation, a discussion between us to come to some sort of a resolution. At the end of this, any agreement that's reached is solely both of your responsibility, and the resolution that is reached, you both have to be fully agreeable for that. And I know that you both come with the ability to make decisions for your company, Devika, as well as for the employees as a whole body. Joni?
Yeah, they've kind of designated me as their leader in this regard.
That's great. Okay. And just a reminder that everything that is said today is completely confidential. During the process, you might see me taking some notes. That's purely for me to keep on track with the conversation. Everything at the end of this mediation will be shredded. And I just want to make sure that you're both in agreement that what is said today in this room is completely confidential, and that we both understand that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, of course.
Again, we're here voluntarily. No one's forcing us to be here. Again, your employer thought that what I understand is a lot of conversation has been had, and processes have been put in place, and you guys have tried to come to some sort of resolution. As of yet, things seem to be escalating rather than de-escalating, and so your employer thought it might be helpful to have someone come from the outside to just help to bridge the gaps between the two of you, and hopefully come to some sort of a resolution today. And so, just so you know, we're going to follow a pretty simple process today. We've designated an hour for the mediation. Is that still okay for both of you?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. And your phones are away. We're not going to be interrupted during that hour. And so the first part of the mediation, I'm going to invite each of you to speak directly to me and ask that the other person does not talk during that time. And so this is a chance for you each to say what you need to say to me without being interrupted, and get everything off of your chest and what you feel are the key concerns and what needs to be addressed today. And it's also a chance for the other person to really listen and try to understand the other person's experience in this situation. Because sometimes when we have a conflict with each other, it's hard to remember that there is possibly another point of view, another perspective. And so this part of the mediation, the first part, is really to try to listen to the other party and try to understand what's going on for them. Now, again, I'm going to ask you not to interrupt while that happens. And sometimes that can be hard because what you're hearing might not be something that you agree with, or you feel very angry or have some strong emotions come up. That's not a problem. I just want to let you know, write anything down that you might want to address, and we will do that in the second part of the mediation. So after the first part, we'll take a break, and then we'll come back together, and that's going to be the part of the mediation where we're going to spend the longest probably, and that's going to be the two of you having a conversation with each other, okay? And I'm going to try to stay out of that, except to help to facilitate the process of having a productive conversation and sort of moving us beyond the conflict and coming up with an agreement, something that we can work with that works for both of you in the future. And so I have a couple of ground rules. If either of you have something that you would like to add to it, please feel free. And the first rule, again, is not to interrupt each other. That's a really important part of the process. And the second rule is just to respect the other person during this mediation. Is there anything, Joni, that you need during this mediation from Devika or myself?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay. And Devika, is there anything that you need from Joni or myself?
I'm fine with the ground rules.
Okay, that's great. Are there any questions before we get started?
So you're from an independent source, like you're not part of management or anything, or HR or anything like that.
That's correct. I have qualifications as a mediator, and my background, I have a private practice, and I do corporations, I do family mediation. I have experience in a wide array of different kind of mediations, and your employer thought it would be helpful to hire me to come in and help, but I am not affiliated with the corporation in any way. Does that answer your question, Joni?
Yeah.
Okay. And Devika?
So maybe I'll step in here and just do a coaching,
Yes,
a brief coaching
please, go
session.
for it.
So what were you trying to do, Alexandra, at this point? We haven't gone into the deeper part where people will start to talk about their stories, but what was your purpose in doing what you did right now?
I'm just trying to set up, I guess, just an expectation of what's going to happen in the next hour.
Mm-hmm. And, create some conditions for people to be able to share their own perspectives, sensing that people are already somewhat very positional, maybe
Sure.
apprehensive in some way.
That's right. So obviously we're in the workplace. There might be some real trust issues that are happening. And sharing the information in a mediation can be quite intimidating for people often in the workplace, because they're nervous that information is going to leak out, and that might affect their job, or it might affect their position as a manager with the employees as a whole. So it's trust. It's very, very important to build an environment where they feel very safe, very heard, and that there's a lot of trust.
Right. And so I interjected at a point after you had first asked Joni to explain if there was anything else she needed, and then just before Devika had an opportunity to respond. And, I'm trying to do this in a way that's going to be manageable within this timeline. And what I would encourage you, because I did that, when we come back after the break, because, we're fitting this into a radio program, and we're going to go to break very shortly. And so then once we commence, after the break, do the ads, come back to air after the promo and the radio program's intro is played, then you go back and then just connect back with Devika and ask her to make sure if there's anything else she needs.
Sure.
Just to make sure that both people are attended to, they have their own opportunity to express themselves, and then you'll commence with what? Where are you going to go so people have a sense of what the next step after the break is?
Okay, so I think I'll start with Joni and just ask her to share her experience of the situation as she sees it with us.
Right, and we're going to get into more of what we call the storytelling part of it, the narrative.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're going to take a break now, so just hold tight.
Okay.
You are listening to Mediation Station on CHHA 1610 AM, Voces Latinas.
Listen to us all around the world. Visit chha16am.ca.
Welcome back to the radio program. So, as I mentioned, we're doing a special version of Mediation Station. It's called Mediation Roleplay on Radio. And we have Alexandra as the mediator, Joni as the employee, and Devika as the manager in those roles. And we're going to get back into it. I did have a contact from somebody just to say, because as part of the intro, we say that this process is confidential. Well, for the benefit of, quote, doing this process, it's not a real play. It's not a role.
Right.
Right. So we're talking about perspective here, but in reality, we do say it is confidential. So that's just for the listener who's listening in. So go ahead.
Yes, not to confuse the listeners. So just before the break, Joni, we'd asked if there's any questions. You had a chance to say that you felt comfortable and there weren't any further questions. And Devika, I just wanted to check in with you and see how you're doing, if there's any questions before we proceed.
Respectful communication is something that's very important to me.
Sorry, ground rules, that's right.
Yes, so I'm glad that that is one of the ground rules.
Would you mind just elaborating a little bit more about what the respectful communication looks like for you, what you need to feel respected?
I certainly don't want any interruptions and any comments that are inappropriate because that's part of some of the events that has led us to this place today. So.
Okay, and as we go along, if anything that you feel is inappropriate comes up, just let us know. Okay. All right, Joni. So I'd just like to ask by you if you could start by telling us your experience so far. What's brought you here today?
Well, I guess even just what you just said too, Devika, it's already feeling uncomfortable because I think that's where a lot of the issues have come from, is that I've been working here for 23 years, and I think Devika started just a couple of years after me, and a lot of us are very long-time employees, and we had a really good working team, and Devika became manager 6 months ago or so, and all of a sudden things were kind of there was this kind of programs that were foisted on us as a group that focused not really on what our job is and our so much our working relationships, but more like focusing on race and diversity. And
so, Joni, just so I understand, so the workplace started putting programs in place that were...
yeah.
Can you just elaborate a little bit on that were race-oriented?
Yeah, that were, more kind of diversity-oriented. And they started making a concerted effort to hire people who were more diverse and had more, were in more minority groups, and we did have kind of a homogeneous white bread kind of thing going on here before,
Okay, so I'm just going to recap just to make sure that I'm understanding. So you've been with the company for 23 years.
Yes.
And it sounds like you've had a really pretty good working relationship with the team, a really cohesive
It was great,
team.
and Devika was part of that too. And we never even thought about race. It was never even an issue before, and that's what makes it so hard now. Is that all of a sudden it's all about race, and it's like these big walls have gone up, and we have to be so careful and walk on eggshells about everything we say and everything we do. And I'm feeling a little uncomfortable because I'm thinking, okay, well, Devika, at the end of the day, Devika's my manager, right? So she can fire me. So, if I really speak my mind and really say how this has kind of affected us, first of all, I think, a lot of what we're all feeling and what people have come to me about is this feeling like all of a sudden people see us as racists. No matter what we say, no matter what we do, it all comes back to, oh, it's because I'm this or because I'm that, not because you've done something wrong or your expectations are out of line. It's just, oh, you're just saying that because I'm black, or you're just saying that, and it's really caused a big thing. But if we say anything about it, all of a sudden, oh, we're racist. And it's caused a big sense of separation in the team, and and people don't feel comfortable anymore. People don't feel like they can say what's really on their mind anymore.
And how would you have gone about previous to this? So it sounds like the courses are a relatively new thing within the company.
Yeah,
and
there's a big focus on it.
And has that changed? That feels like it's changed the culture for you in the company.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, and it's caused problems. It's like, some of these new hires, there's been more of a focus on hiring people who are from different groups, and that's great. But, they have to pay their dues like everybody else. Like I paid my dues, like Devika paid her dues. We, worked shifts that weren't so great. We did some stuff that was really boring and didn't get the exciting projects, and that's what you have to do when you start. And now it's kind of like, oh, I don't get to do this or that. That's just because I'm, no. And it's like, you get these evil eyes at you. And even at lunchtime, we sit in different groups. We all used to sit together.
Okay.
And have a good time. And it's just so much division now.
So it's the division, and you feel, sounds like you're feeling you don't have the freedom to express or to talk how you would have talked before that these courses came in place, and that's difficult
it's
for
like
you.
Automatically we're perceived as being bigoted or racist, when that's not really it at all. It's
Okay, so Joni, what is it that you'd like to see happen today? Why are you here today?
Well, the workers trust me because I've been around a long time. I've been around the block, and Devika and I have always had a really good relationship. And they're hoping that we can kind of maybe not make it so divisive, but maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll have to come up with some ideas together, but this kind of trying to change the whole culture of how we work together, it's too much too fast, and it's people are really reacting against it.
Okay. And so today, you would like to figure out a way of, I guess help me understand a little bit more about what you need to get out of the process today. Is it a relationship with Devika? Is it a relationship for the employees as a whole? I'm not sure I'm capturing exactly what it is. If you just help me to understand that just a little bit more.
Maybe it's kind of, I know Devika, has been really working hard in her new role to kind of jump on the bandwagon and have all this kind of anti-oppression stuff happening, and I just representing the workers, I'm hoping that we can kind of back off of that a little bit and let people interact just as people for a while and focus on the work and maybe treating everybody with respect, like putting the focus on treating everybody with respect as people, maybe not so much as just, people of color over here, people without color over here, and it just seems too divisive. I'm hoping that we can find a way to back off of this a little bit and maybe kind of build up our team again.
Okay, so it feels like there's you're getting I'm trying to think of the word fragmented. So the culture, it's really splitting up.
It's tearing us apart.
It's tearing you guys up. Okay. I'm just going to check in with Devika. Devika, how are you doing?
I'm okay, and I appreciate Joni's candidness, but having said that, it's also very difficult. It has been a difficult journey for me. I've worked with Joni and the rest of the team for a very long time, and respect and value the relationships. But it's also easy, I think, for Joni to take the position she is, to say, let's all get together and sort of be one happy workplace. The fact of the matter is that, there have been some really hurtful comments that have been made about how I've reached this position.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I think, completely misfounded.
And how long have you been with the company?
I've been working here for the last 21 years.
Okay.
And I've put in my time. I've, done what's required, worked hard, and got recently promoted as manager. And I've been hearing, some really inappropriate and nasty comments that really kind of indicate that it's bordering on harassment and discrimination, and it's not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. And with respect to the policies that we have in place that Joni was referring to, these have been in place for a very long time. This is nothing new. It's just with the recent incidents that have taken place, they have kind of been put to the forefront. So, I would definitely love for us to be able to resolve this and come to some kind of, solution. But I think there has to be some recognition of some of the things that have gone on that has created this situation, and that's important to me.
Okay, and can you elaborate a little bit about what you think has created the situation? Are there any sort of key points in time that need to be addressed today?
I have had some of my staff, especially the new hires, come to me and complain about inappropriate comments and some bullying that has been going on by the older employees. By older, I mean the more
senior staff?
Senior staff. And again, some of these comments have been based on the identities of the individuals that have been hired, most of them being racialized, and it's clearly not acceptable for anyone in this workplace to be making inappropriate comments about individuals based on their personal characteristics.
Okay, so
we're going to take, this is the guy, the coach, the host, whatever I am. I'm interjecting because we got to take a break, and so when we come back after the break, we'll have a little debrief, and then we'll get back into the process. You're listening to Mediation Station on CHHA 1610 AM, Voces Latinas.
Radio Voces Latinas.
Okay, we're back. We're here, Mediation Station. We're live on the air, doing mediation role play on radio. So I just want a quote as the host here, trying to, and coach, to interject and just say, before we took the break, during that segment, you were trying to provide, as a mediator, an opportunity for each party to open up and share some story. Is that, you want to explain a little more?
Yeah, it's the time in the mediation where each party can really openly say what's been going on for them in the conflict without being interrupted by the other person, and it gives the other party a chance to hopefully listen with a little bit more openness, because there's no pressure for them to respond to what's being said, and hopefully start to bridge the gap and see the other person's perspective in the conflict.
Right. So you're trying to get people to share their perspectives so that you learn more. Also, for them to learn more, even about some of the circumstances that has happened, and for each other to learn more, to gain insights into things that they may have been, in the absence of good communication, forming opinions or making assumptions about. So here's an opportunity that you're going to help bridge some of that gap. Yeah. Anything you, Devika, want to say?
No, I think that's a very good cap of what we've been doing.
And Ms. Joni?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So, Alexandra, go back and then continue on with a little more of exploring with Devika, and then do the process as you will.
Okay. Devika, just before we went to the break, you were just talking a little bit about what brought you here today. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I certainly take great exception to any suggestion that my having got to this position has anything to do with my identity, and I think that feeds into stereotypes, and I find it deeply offensive, and I certainly want that addressed, as well as the way in which some other staff have been treated.
And how have things changed for you becoming a manager? You were part of the employees for so long, years and years, many years. So what's changed for you since becoming a manager?
For me, really nothing has changed significantly until the last couple of months, when there's been some comments, as I said, that I was completely taken aback, because these are individuals that I've worked with, I respect and value, and all of a sudden race has become an issue, and in a manner that it should not be. So in that sense, it has been quite challenging, because the relationships have become a lot more tense, and there's been a lot of divisiveness, I would say, and it has taken a great toll.
Okay, and what would you like to see happen today?
I would certainly want us to be able to come up with some resolution or some kind of plan where we can be open with each other and be able to enhance the understanding and collaboration between employees, so that there is no misunderstandings and and avoid stereotypes and any type of inappropriate behavior.
And how close are the two of you? You've both worked in the company for a very long time. What's your personal relationship been like?
From my perspective, it's been great for the past 21 years, and it's, as I mentioned, just in the last couple of months, things have taken a downward spiral. And
from your perspective, what's changed in the last couple of months? Has changed this shift in the culture that's very, very uncomfortable for both of you. It's a common thread.
I can only assume that people are unhappy about the fact that I've been promoted, and for reasons that I think are not valid.
Okay. Joni, how are you doing over there?
Well, it's news to me that people have been saying racist things to the new hires. it's,
How many people are we talking about here? How many new hires have come on board?
I think there's maybe 10 or so, eh?
Yeah, I would say around about 10.
Okay, and the new hiring, is this after the diversity training that everyone in the workplace has received? Okay, and yes. Yeah. And Devika, was that part of your plan, bringing in the diversity training for the employees?
Well,
or where did that initiative start?
Well, I have been involved in the Diversity and Equity Initiative from the outset, and like I mentioned earlier, this is not a new program or initiative by any means. This has been a long-established, program policy at this workplace, and the direction that senior management took is something that was out of my control, and I do not know how and why things panned out the way it did. And but having said that, I don't believe the hiring was based on merit for sure. Perhaps it included individuals from different backgrounds with different identities to be more reflective and inclusive of the community that we serve, as well as just the community as a whole. And but it was all very much based on merit, and I don't believe there were any inappropriate or personal characteristics that came into consideration in the hiring of the new staff.
Okay. I guess I need a little direction here.
Okay, we'll stop.
Yeah.
So why are you checking in? What's going on? What are you thinking about?
I just, what am I thinking about? I just need a little direction.
Are you wondering what to ask next?
I think I'm wondering where to go with the time that we've got, as just like a little bit of help.
Okay, so what do you think, Joni? You can speak up.
I think us to talk to each other at this point would be a good idea.
Is that, it feels a little rushed, but for the sake of the radio show, should we go in that direction?
Well, you can present, okay, so what I've heard as a mediator, I've heard some shared perspectives, though you're not quite on the same page. You've talked about the same kinds of things, though, from a different perspective. So take that and present it, and then say, okay, from your perspective, how about you talk directly with each other about that and explain and hear
what's going on for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so you can approach, for example, the diversity program, if that's something, because they've talked both about that.
Okay. Sorry, guys. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about this diversity program, because that seems to be something that keeps coming up in the conversation. Joni, do you want to start saying a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, it's like you said, Devika, we've always had a really good working relationship, and we've always had a really good team, and it didn't seem to even be an issue until senior management kind of plunked this down on us and said, here, now we're all about diversity. And then you got to kind of look at perceptions of the workers when, they start hiring differently than they used to. And it's all of a sudden, after like decades. We're not talking about just a gradual kind of change. We're talking about all of a sudden this is like very hard line, and I think that the workers can't help but feel that you being hired as manager is part of this whole shift. And I mean, for example, I have seniority over you, and I have been seen as a leader among the employees, and perhaps maybe it would have been made more sense for me to be the manager. than you. But there could be a perception that because of this program, that's why you became manager instead of me. You know, maybe that's what people think.
And I take great exception to that. I understand your position that seniority should trump. However, I mean, well, I am not quite sure that I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I went through the same competitive process as everyone else, every other candidate that applied for this role, and I believe I got this position purely on merit. And, you know, to suggest otherwise, I find is deeply offensive.
But I think you're seeing it as people believing it's otherwise. It's more perception. Can you see how people could have that perception with this new push in the senior management? Can you see how people might have this perception?
I appreciate that change is difficult, and as you mentioned, I heard you say that, you know, we've hired a certain way for the past so many decades, and all of a sudden there's been a lot of change, and I can certainly appreciate how changes can be difficult. But having said that, I don't understand why it would make any difference to anyone.
So I'm just going to jump in here. So Joni, is there something that the staff, it would be helpful for the staff if the management could do? Because I know it sounds like the changes are happening really quickly, and you've had this long established culture that all of a sudden seems to be changing for you. Is there something that Devika could bring back to the senior management that could help to maybe some more communication around what's going on, or to help you understand, or help the employees there understand what's going on? How could Devika help with the perception and the understanding to bridge that gap for you guys, for the employees?
I think more than bringing anything back to senior management, it would really be helpful if Devika could understand where that perception might come from. Put herself in some of the workers' shoes and understand where the perception comes from. And I can see that, you know, I see that you're really very insulted and upset about it. And that's kind of what's wrong with the whole program.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop you there. Let's just give Devika a chance to answer that question, because I think it's a really important question. Is there anything you can say to Joni to shed some light on how you feel about the new position and how it might impact the culture or the perception that the employees have?
Well, I can appreciate again that perceptions can be what they are at this point. For me, the important thing is you can have a perception, however, acting on that in a manner that is disrespectful to people and colleagues, it's just not cool. And I can certainly try to work with the different groups and colleagues to adjust the perception, if you will, for lack of a better term. But beyond that, I mean, I still believe that, you know, regardless of where the perception is coming from, we need to address that.
So I want to interject here because we got to go to break, but I just want to say, as a mediator, you know, we get sometimes caught up on one perspective over the other. And what I want to convey and make sure that we're providing as equitable an opportunity for all parties. And, quote, one party doesn't own this process and the decision-making. It's inclusive of both to contribute. So possibly it could be construed that it's Joni that's conveying to Devika and she needs to change only, where it is an element of this process that everyone has to contribute in some way. So you'd have to touch base with Devika and say, what does she need in terms of, quote, Joni and the employees also to contribute to making this a, quote, healthier, more productive workplace. So we'll talk about that when we come back. We're going to take another break. You're listening to Mediation Station on CHHA 1610 AM, versus Latinos. Welcome back to Mediation Roleplay on radio. Yeah, trying to multitask. So we just had a short debrief before we took the break, and I was just trying to provide that, everybody who's part of a process is the participants, the clients, the parties, whatever you want to terminology it, is that they contribute. We don't take one side over the other as a mediator or third party. And we want to help to support the deepening connection for people to appreciate a lot of gaining insight about the other perspective they weren't aware of. So, Alexandra, if you could go forward and, try and get that aligned and connected, and then work toward creating some kind of sense of, mutual decision-making.
Okay, so Devika, would you let Joni know what it is that you need from her and the employees?
I certainly, it's fairly simple from my perspective, and that's to be respectful and not to make comments that are stereotypical, and to be able to restore the working relationships that we've had in the past.
And Joni, how do you feel about what Devika's just said?
Well, I think I want that too. And I think the problem here is that all of us are being painted with the same brush. And it's kind of like there's some stereotyping going on too of the people who have been here a long time, people who are not of color, and there's things going on both ways. And I think that if people make inappropriate comments and racist comments and things they shouldn't say, then those people have to be dealt with specifically about those comments.
So is there a process in place right now, Devika, for what happens when these comments are made? What happens to someone?
Well, that is a good point. We do have policies in place. However, I believe currently there is no procedure, a complaint procedure or mechanism through which complaints can be dealt with on an individual basis. And just to comment on Joni's point about there being stereotyping of employees who've worked here for a long time, I don't believe that it has been the case. It's just in the situations that I've had to deal with where new employees have approached me with inappropriate comments that have been made, and inappropriate comments don't necessarily have to relate to race. It can just be inappropriate in many ways, and I have had to deal with it on an individual basis. So I have definitely made an attempt not to generalize and paint everyone with the same brush.
Yeah, well, you just kind of did generalize, because you're saying that you don't think that it is stereotyping on the other side.
I don't believe that I have been stereotyping is what I was trying to communicate.
So, I don't know. I think you're right. There has to be a process put in place for these things to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis and on a specific basis. And I think that's the only way that we're going to address these problems that we need to address, because it is tearing us apart.
So what happens right now? Someone is called a name. It sounds like it's happening on both sides, to be honest. I'm hearing from both of you that you're feeling harassed, and you're feeling picked on. Is that right?
But I don't think you're getting it, Devika, that we're getting picked on too. We need to come together and have a process that works for all of us.
Certainly. I this is the first time I am hearing, though, Joni, of individuals feeling like they have been picked on because no one has approached me directly. It's been the new hires that have come to me with their concerns, and I have been dealing with those concerns on a case-by-case basis. I do think we have some common ground, and in terms of coming up with a procedure that is open to any employee, regardless of their background, to raise their concerns and have it dealt with appropriately.
Joni, how do you feel about what Devika's saying?
Something I want to say right now, and I think it's really important, is that, and I speak for all the employees when I say that we do respect you, and there isn't anyone who has said to me that they don't think that you're qualified for this job, or that you can't do this job, or that you don't have the skills. We all do think that. But with the new focus on race and all, it just seems...
Okay, so I hear that Devika is a very well-respected manager amongst the employees. And how does that feel when you hear that, Devika?
I appreciate Joni mentioning that, and thank you for that. Certainly, I don't think this is a matter that can be resolved overnight. It's definitely a lot more complex than what can be sort of smoothed over or resolved. Are
there any first steps that management would be willing to take, as well as the employees, Joni, in starting to bridge this communication gap?
Certainly, from management's perspective, we can create perhaps a committee or a group where both employees and management can come together to figure out a complaint procedure, and also in terms of training to enhance understanding.
And Joni, how do you feel about that? About management coming up with a committee to address each concern as it comes up?
Well, never let it be said that I want another committee, Devika, but I think that that's a good idea.
Okay, so let me interject because we have to really be mindful of the timeline. Basically, we're not going to get to the full resolution. The idea is to have the conversation, to open up that opportunity and possibility. It sounds like there's a, quote, an agreement in principle to, continue the conversation. They'll probably schedule another session, i.e., for example, or have a longer session than just being on the radio, right? We're doing it for the purposes of the exercise. At least there's a sense of shifting, some transition of people's from the positions to a more collaborative process where they're going to make mutual decision making. That's somewhat established. That's what you helped establish, Alexandra, which is part of the purpose of the process. We're maybe in another day we'll reconvene and we'll figure out how to continue on. But just for the benefit of the listener and the watcher, that this is a process. It takes time. It's not going to be quick, cut, and move on. So I want to thank the three of you and appreciate it. We got to close out the show for tonight. You have been listening to and watching Mediation Station on Roleplay. And thank you very much, and we'll see you sometime next time. Bye-bye.